For more information, please visit restoreportsmouth.com.
Well, hey, welcome to Proverbs on the patio, and I'm actually on a patio tonight. I don't want you guys to accuse me of being soft. It is 45 degrees, so I'm going to tough it up. Hopefully you guys can stick with me. Proverbs chapter 26. Proverbs on the patio is where we go chapter by chapter through the Old Testament book of Proverbs. A lot of wise sayings that a father compiled for his son. Multiple authors through these Proverbs, but ultimately King Solomon wrote a lot of them. And I'm on a different patio. I'm not on my patio tonight, obviously. We just missed sunset. It's a little late. That's fine. But I'm going to jump right into Proverbs chapter 26 in verse 1. Like snow in summer or rain in harvest, so honor is not fitting for a fool. There are some things that just don't make sense. And when he wrote this letter, this passage, he knew that these people understood that you shouldn't have snow in the summer and you shouldn't have rain in harvest. That just was something that was true of their time. And he says, so is honor not fitting for a fool. We live in a world where sometimes things get turned upside down by sin, by the system around us that often rewards those who are foolish and punishes those who are wise. And so it was true then and it's true now. Sin has wrecked everything, and so there isn't always justice and there isn't always right going on in the world. And sometimes fools are lifted up and honored. This is true in every area of life. And it's one of those things he's saying it shouldn't happen, but sometimes it does happen, even though it shouldn't happen. There's 13 sayings in chapter 26 that are like sayings. So like, he starts the actual chapter, like snow. He's using illustrations. He's saying just like this is this way, this is how this works. And so we're going to see a few of those in this chapter. Down in verse 4, he kind of seems to contradict himself. He says, answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself. So step number 1, if somebody's being foolish, don't respond, don't get involved. But then in verse 5, he says the exact opposite. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. 2 ways we can look at this. Number 1, no matter what you do, the fool has wrapped you up in his foolishness and you lose. That's kind of an understood thing. Like, man, even when you do this way or this way, you're going to get wrapped up. But the opposite might be that he's saying this. Listen, whether you answer him or not, you're going to have to use wisdom, what we would in the New Testament consider Holy Spirit given wisdom, to know when we should and maybe when we shouldn't. This isn't a contradiction. He's saying sometimes no matter what you do, you're going to get wrapped up in foolishness. So sorry, that's just the way it is when you're around fools. And the other interpretation might be, hey, sometimes you can figure out that it is wise to answer him and sometimes it's wise not to answer him. And then in verse 6, he uses a different altogether message, but really kind of the same thing. Whoever sends a message by the hand of a fool cuts off his own feet and drinks violence. Now, they sent messages back then in a different way than us, but the same thing is true to this day. We still send messages, and back then when you had someone that you could send, it was the fastest way for you to do it. It wasn't just a letter, it was a courier, somebody taking it quickly. But he says, when you send the message in the hand of a fool, you cut off your own feet and you drink violence. This really is what we need to hear today. We send messages not by the hands of a fool, but sometimes we are the fool in how we send messages. Whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's via FaceTime, whether it's a message we send over the internet, he's saying the same thing today. When we are foolish, whether it's our hand or we send it by way of somebody else who we know to be foolish, we're cutting off our own feet. And what he's saying is, it's not going to get anywhere. You're not going to get any traction. So he's encouraging us to be wise, but also to consider who we trust with our secrets, with our memos, with our messages. Listen, just because somebody's in the DMs, just because somebody sent you a private message doesn't always mean you can or should trust them. Then in verse 9, this is an interesting little phrasing here. He says, like a thorn that goes up into the hand of a drunkard is a proverb in the mouth of fools. He says, listen, even fools sometimes can say a proverb, but they might not get it. The thorn going into the hand of a drunkard, the idea is this: when somebody's drunk, they don't feel pain. And so usually when a thorn would hurt them, they would feel it, but they're so drunk they don't even necessarily sense it. He says the same is true when a fool shares a proverb. He senses it, he hears it, but he doesn't allow it to do what it should. He doesn't respond to it. It doesn't produce any results. You feel me? So even if you are a fool, you can share a wise proverb, but you'll never actually see it bear fruit in your life because you're too foolish to even see what that proverb means. So just because somebody sounds smart, it's always good to see, does the proverb they're saying, have they lived it out? Are they living like they talk? And then in verse 11, y'all, a discouraging proverb because it's human nature lived out. Like a dog that returns to his vomit is a fool who repeats his folly. I wish I could tell you that I've never returned to my foolishness, but I am human and we tend to do things over and over and still not learn the lesson. He said it's gross, it's nasty, and it's just the way fools are, but ultimately most of us act. Verse 12, do you see a man who is wise in his own eyes? There is more hope for a fool than for him. So here he goes. This is a fool. This is even less than that. Somebody who's wise in his own eyes. What this means is somebody without a teachable spirit. They say, I know everything. I've got it all together. I don't know about you guys, but nothing frustrates me more than when I spend time with someone trying to help them or encourage them, and they say, no, Mark, I've got it. I figured it out. And you know that they're struggling, but they won't admit that they need help or that they need encouragement or if they need some information. Listen, when you're young, it is so good to be teachable, but don't lose that teachable spirit as you age. I want every one of us to continue to be teachable by the Holy Spirit, but also teachable from one another. There is always a Christian who has something to offer me and teach me and encourage me and help me. And then skip on down to verse 17. Whoever meddles in a quarrel not his own is like one who takes a passing dog by the ears. Dogs were not pets when this was written. Most of the time they were street animals. They were used as guard dogs and they were fed scraps, but they weren't pets that sat in somebody's lap. They were wild. They hadn't been trained. They hadn't been taught not to bite, most of them. So if you grabbed a passing dog by the ears, you were gonna get hurt. So he says, when you meddle in a quarrel that's not yours, you are asking for trouble. And I'm gonna tell you something. I scroll past so many quarrels on this device and I don't get involved. You know why? I don't want to get bit. It's not my problem. It's not my drama. It's not my trouble. And the problem is most of us Christians, we like getting involved in that. And we'll speak to that here in just a second. Verse 20, he begins this really great illustration. He says, a fire goes out for lack of wood. And where there is no whisper, quarreling ceases. We had this bonfire at our staff retreat a couple of weeks ago. And Pastor Kevin built this huge bonfire. It was great. And every few minutes he would get up and put another log on, and that fire would just roar. It would roar, man. It was great. But the second he stopped putting fire on it, man, it started to burn out. The same is true of quarreling. When there's no gossiper or whisperer, man, quarrels seem to go away. And when we gossip or quarrel or talk about things we don't know, we tend to rebuild the fire. Verse 21, as charcoal to hot embers and wood to fire, so is a quarrelsome man for kindling strife. He says here, gossip is this burning fire, right? And every one of us have the opportunity to put the fire out by stopping the gossip or put another log on the fire by passing it along. And then he admits in verse 22 that it's fun. He says, the words of a whisperer are like delicious morsels. It just feels good to hear gossip. It's something in our human nature. We love hearing it. That's why when somebody spills some tea or shares some good gossip, you say, oh yeah. And because it's delicious for whatever reason, we love hearing it. They go down into the inner parts of the body. He says, listen, it feels good. It sounds good. But every time you hear gossip, you've got a chance to put the fire out by letting it stop with you, or to keep rebuilding that fire by throwing some wood on the fire, keeping those kindles burning. Guys, so much good insight here, talking about living foolishly, responding to correction or even instruction, and then ultimately that gossip part. I got to admit to you as your pastor, sometimes, all the time, man, I struggle with that. I love hearing good gossip. I love getting a text. I love hearing things about people. But I've got to make a conscious decision to be the last text, to be the last one who hears about this. And not just to gossip about someone, but when I hear something, to reach out to that person and say, man, I heard this. Is this what's going on? How can I help? How can I pray for you? I want you to know you're not alone in this. Guys, what a difference we can make when we turn the gossip line into a dead end with us. So, lots of good stuff here. I'd encourage you to read through chapter 26. We'll be in chapter 27 next week. Hey, be sure to like, comment on this video. We want to make sure more people see Bible teaching on their feed instead of just drama, arguing, and all those different types of things. I'm really excited about this weekend in church. We are continuing this Christmas in Philippians theme. We're going to be talking about the incarnation of Christ, and I'm really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to our Christmas Eve outdoor service. So get your gloves, get your scarves. It's going to be a great time, December 24th, outdoor. Going to be a wonderful service, short service because it'll probably be cold. It could be warm. Who knows? It's Hampton Roads. We never know what's going to happen. But guys, God's been faithful to us this year. He's going to be faithful to us next year. Thank you for being a generous church, an adjustable church, a flexible church. And I want to give you this warning. Tomorrow, I'm going to be sending out an email to our church. If you're not a part of our email list, you can subscribe in the description of this video. And I'm going to be sharing with you some specific ways that we need to begin praying. We have been an active church. We've been a growing church. We've been an evangelistic church, but we need to be a praying church for the next few months because I believe God is going to do some incredible things in our midst, in your life, in my life, in our community. More than just making us feel better, He's going to use us to help people in the community, to reach people far from Jesus, to see people baptized, lives change. He's going to do that because that's what He always does with His church. So get ready. We're going to start praying. Of course, when the new year, we always start the new year with 21 days of prayer and fasting, but we're going to start praying now because God is going to move. He's already moving in the lives of many of the new believers in our church as well as the leadership in our church, and I'm excited about what God is going to do. And I know it's been a hard year, but I have said this from the beginning that revivals and spiritual reformations always come on the heels of difficult, hard scenarios and circumstances in the church and in the world, and I believe God is about to do something incredible. So let's get on board. Let's start praying and let's start, serving, inviting, sharing the gospel, looking for gospel witness opportunities. God's up to something and we are down for anything. Have a great rest of your night. I'll see you guys this weekend at church at 9:30 outdoors, as well as online at 8, 9:30, and 11. And then, of course, in January, we're going to be having our indoor and outdoor services starting the first weekend in January, a 9:30 indoor service and 11 o'clock outdoor service. Maybe it'll be a little bit warmer by doing that. And we look forward to serving together, growing together, and loving God and loving others. Have a great rest of your night.